a special Thursday edition of Hudson County Review Live. I am your host, John R., where the R stands for Rated R Superstar Highness, and I am joined with Jersey City Wardee candidate James Solomon. James, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here, John. Thank you.
You know, Jersey City doesn't have a lot of luck with guys named Solomon. I don't know if you ever heard that.
I have not heard that yet, so this is going to be good for me to learn.
Do you know what I'm talking about or not?
I don't. Please enlighten me.
Solomon Dweck. I'm sure you've heard of him.
I do. You know, last name, first name, totally different.
Totally different.
Totally different.
I know, you're two totally different guys. But just so you know.
I have not been involved in organ smuggling or campaign bribery.
Well, that's good for people to know. But
exactly, right?
I want to let you and our viewers know, if you wanted to make a contribution to Hudson County View, we'll have this cereal box under the table. So, but just let me know so I can look away. That way it's okay.
We will take that under consideration as a campaign.
All right. So with all that said,
yes.
Let's get down to the actual campaign stuff. So, to my knowledge, you haven't held elected office before.
That's correct.
And
not even in high school.
Okay, not even student council.
No,
none of that.
No, none of that.
All right. So why did you decide to want to come out in a Wardee race that you knew was going to have a lot of moving parts, a lot of different candidates, and downtown there's a lot of issues. So why did you want to get involved?
Absolutely, it's a great question. So I think for me, I feel like downtown, the issue that I think most candidates would agree upon, the key issue facing downtown is development and just the growth of Jersey City, both here and across all 6 wards. And I saw things that I think we needed to change, right? Whether that was tax abatements, over 30 long-term tax abatements over the last 4 years, not having a community empowered to set a vision for the future, and no long-term infrastructure planning. And I saw all those things happening, and I didn't see anybody sort of speaking to those issues in the downtown Wardee council race. And so that's really what decided to sort of get me involved. But I also have a background and a passion for city government. It's where I worked for a few years in Boston and a little bit in Newark. And it is something that I believe can really I have a voice and an ability to bring change to Jersey City, and so I decided to jump into the race.
All right, so this was something that you've been planning for about how long?
Well, so the timeline, there is a personal aspect to the timeline, which I think some folks know, which is so in October, November 2015, I was diagnosed with lymphoma. And that led me to think about, what did I want to do with my life? Life is incredibly short, and we need to, maximize the time that we have here. And so after I was diagnosed, that's really when I started to think about, hey, well, maybe I might be interested in running. It wasn't though until I think the summer of 2016 and then the fall of 2016 that I was really like, I think this is something that I really do want to do.
So, that's obviously very unique. But, I'm sure an interesting just twist on the whole story that people don't know about. So I'm even more happy to have you here based on that.
Thank you.
Now, with that in mind, so what do you think makes you stand out from the other candidates? I mean, obviously the deadline's about, I guess, 2.5 weeks away now, but we're looking at probably at least 6 candidates. What do you think makes you stand out from the pack?
Yeah, and I think there are a number of good candidates in the race, which is a good thing. That's local democracy. The more people who get engaged, the better. But I do think that I bring a sort of unique both sort of skills and experiences that will actually make a difference in people's lives. So what distinguishes me from the other candidates is, first, I have experience making government work for people inside of city halls. I designed an affordable housing policy that's currently being instituted in Massachusetts. I've worked inside both city halls in Newark and Boston, so I know what it takes to get change done on the inside of government. But I'm also running a grassroots campaign. Right? We have volunteers that we've worked on with the Hillary campaign, with the Vic Trump Kushner, with a number of, who I've met through just community meetings and door knocking, where we are truly a grassroots campaign that is independent. And our slogan of the campaign is unbought and unbossed. And that's not just for show, that's true, right? We don't have any bosses we're reporting to. The major established powerful interests of Hudson County are not secretly behind my campaign. And if I'm elected, I'm going to be able to represent the people of downtown and the people of Jersey City honestly and openly, and I think that distinguishes us. So that combination of experience inside government and the sort of grassroots nature of the campaign.
So the Vic Trump Kushner, how most people know you prior to this candidacy. We spoke about this previously about how you think it's very important to take a firm stance against national issues coming from D.C., specifically the White House. So could we just touch on that again? Why do you think that's important?
Yeah, so I think first of all, we're the most diverse city in America. And we're an incredibly open and welcoming city, right? 40% of people who live in Jersey City weren't born in America. And when those values are being questioned on a national level, right? When there are certain policies, for example, ICE raids and immigration policies that are being pushed from Washington locally, we have to take a stand for our values. Those are the values of this community, and you have to fight for those, right? If you say my values only apply on local issues, but on national issues I have nothing to say, then I don't think you're standing up for the values of downtown Jersey City and all of Jersey City. So to me, it's sort of a moral obligation to fight for those values here. Obviously, Evict Trump Kushner is one way we fight for those values, but if elected, an example would be climate resiliency. Right, folks in Washington are denying the reality of climate change. Our city is a flood zone, right? Downtown, but on the west side too, right? If you look at the maps of sea level rise 5-6 feet, it's not just downtown that gets flooded, right? It's a lot of west side that also gets flooded as well. And so we need to build a climate resiliency policy here in Jersey City that responds to what's happening nationally.
So how do you think that would look?
Climate resiliency policy. So I think there's a couple things we could look at, and obviously, there are sort of experts that can, fill in many of the details. But one of which is green infrastructure. I know the city has started initiatives on water, and those are some interesting pilot programs. There's bioswales, there's permeable pavement. To what extent can we turn those pilots into policy, right? That affects us citywide. That's one piece. The second piece is requiring developers to have more water retaining infrastructure in their developments. So I can give you an example. Right here in the village on Marcellus, there's a new development that's going before the zoning board. They're 100% lot coverage. They're taking up the full lot. And when they presented before the Village Neighborhood Association in June, they didn't have a single piece of water retention and green infrastructure. Not a green roof, not even water barrels, which don't cost very little.
Yeah.
And that is something we can't let continue. So that looks at how do we look at our zoning code, how do we change it so that when any new developer is coming up with a project, that water retention is a piece of it, whether it's a giant tower or whether it's a 4-story infill development in the village.
And you and I have also spoke about responsible development.
We have, yeah.
And obviously that's another hallmark of your campaign, making developers accountable, and putting the residents' needs before them. So again, could you just reiterate that for those that missed it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the number one issue of the downtown race. Which candidate is most qualified to change the practices of development in downtown Jersey City and citywide? And I believe I am that candidate. So we have taken on through an organized movement, Kushner Companies, and we've won. Where I think I haven't heard of an abatement being denied in Jersey City in my recent memory, and now we had a 30-year tax abatement that was denied because of the work that we did. So we've taken on a developer and we've won on behalf of the values of our city. So I think that is sort of positions me to do that once we're in City Hall. So what is it that we want to do? I think 3 big things, which I mentioned earlier, but really important to reiterate. The process of abatements needs to be reformed. We've given out too much and received too little back. That's the first thing. The second thing is that long-term infrastructure planning. We've seen over in New York what happens when you build and build and build, but you don't think about the long-term infrastructure of the MTA. So remember, Andrew Cuomo held a photo op to go to the sort of the depths or the bowels of the MTA, and he was like, oh my God, who knew that this infrastructure was 100 years old? It's like, of course we all knew it was 100 years old, right? Like, this isn't rocket science, right? You have to plan, and we know that our infrastructure is old. We know the PATH train's been operating for over a century.
Right.
So we can't keep building with the short-term mentality. We have to have a long-term transportation plan. And then the last piece is community vision. We've hired a new city planner, Anicia, I mispronounced her last name, so I'll just stay with Anicia. And I think her vision is great. And I think we need to build on that and have people at the city council that really believe that a community should set a vision for growth. Now, you have to be honest with the community about trade-offs. There's always trade-offs when it comes to development. But what we shouldn't be doing is having trade-offs decided behind closed doors, which is what I think currently happens. And then when a redevelopment plan is already designed, a developer is already sort of in the works, and then going to the community and saying, well, here's this plan that we have. I think in downtown there was the Clementi redevelopment plan. There are some good aspects of that plan, but there's a lot that was sort of looked at behind closed doors. And then when it was given to the community, there was significant disappointment in that plan and significant opposition to it. And what I think is that the community should have been brought in at the very, very start. What do you guys want to see with this neighborhood, with this specific redevelopment area, but also all of Marin Boulevard? There's a ton of development coming up that boulevard. I think we should have a community vision for that.
So obviously this is a topic you've given a lot of thought. Like I just said, hallmark of the campaign, I believe, up to this point.
Yep, absolutely.
So with all that said, though, I mean, you're only going to be one voice, one vote on the council. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how do you think you could make this kind of a large impact that you're hoping to make?
It's a great question. And first of all, we don't know what this election will bring. We don't know who the mayor is going to be. We don't know what the makeup of the council is going to be. And I think in all 6 wards, there are a number of strong candidates, as well as at the at-large position. So, we don't know what the council looks like. Could we re-elect the mayor and then elect an independent majority on the council? I think that's a real possibility. Could we elect, Bill Matsakudis, and then have, a mix of independents and full council, sort of team council members? So without knowing what the makeup of the council looks like, it's hard to assess what we're going to be able to do. What I would say is this: whether I'm a lone voice of independence or whether I'm with an independent majority, the key to change is political organizing. And that political organizing and sound ideas. You don't want to leave out the sound ideas part.
Sure, ideas are good.
Ideas are important. But take a look at the Kushner example, right? I know that back in January of 2017, so after Trump had been elected, the city was still assuming that the One Journal Square development was going to move forward as planned. That I believe the mayor was at a community event and a community meeting in Journal Square saying we expect construction to start shortly. But then we organized, right? We got people together, we showed up at City Hall, and we started to push a message that, I believe had sound basis behind it. And that got changed up. Right, that helped influence and push the city to reject the 30-year tax abatement application. So what I think we'll do, no matter whether again it's one of 8, we will organize around these issues of development as well as other things, so we can kind of push for change at the city council level.
So let's talk a little bit more about Kushner Companies and their relationship with Jersey City. So obviously the One Journal Square is the big one.
Yeah.
There was talk about visas and international meeting in China. Obviously you know the story well, but maybe not everybody out there does. So can you just bring us up to speed from your perspective and why you thought this was really important to fight against?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kushner Companies. The former CEO was Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, and he was CEO during the entire campaign, including the time where Donald Trump lied about Jersey City when he said that tens of thousands of Muslims were celebrating 9/11, which to me is a vicious slander of a religious minority. And, when we start slandering religious minorities, bad things follow. So I think Jared Kushner had a responsibility to speak out, right, to publicly say, I'm trying to develop in Jersey City, in the most diverse city in the country, while also running the presidential campaign of a man who is attacking Jersey City, not just our values in terms of our immigration and our diversity, but also specifically lying about Jersey City. So it started there, right, that Jared Kushner was developing in a community he did not respect and asking for profits from it. So that's sort of one. But there's more, and you mentioned the visas. And so, an example of how Kushner Companies operates is, a tolerance and a willingness to profit off of corrupt practices. So what does that look like? We have the EB-5 visa program, and that allows investors in foreign countries to donate a smaller amount of money than they would normally, $500,000 as opposed to $1 million, if that development is in an underserved area or an area of high unemployment. Now, they utilize that program for the 65 Bay Street development, that it's in the heart of downtown, a few blocks from the waterfront.
Yes.
Anyone who has been down there knows there is not widespread devastation. I believe the unemployment rate is below 2%.
Right.
This is one of the wealthiest parts of Jersey City and, frankly, America.
Not exactly urban.
No. I mean, it's urban in the sense of the city, but it is not struggling. Right? It's not a struggling neighborhood.
Okay.
And so what they did is they drew a map. And the map started with downtown. And they connected it all the way into Greenville. And they said, hey, look, we're developing in a neighborhood of 10% unemployment because we drew this gerrymandered map that connects downtown to Greenville. Now, look, they're not the only developers who engage in that type of corrupt practice, but it's corruption, right? It is, I am getting money off of a program designed to help underserved people by lying about it. That's what they did, right? And we shouldn't allow them to do that. And that also flows in, that's stuff I can get very passionate about.
I know.
That also flows into these issues on immigration, right? Where you say, bad hombres are coming into America. We got to keep them out.
Did they say hombres?
I don't know if they say hombres. I don't think the president can pronounce Spanish words particularly well.
Ow.
Yes, it's probably hombres or something like that. But
to the point.
Yeah, but to the point, exactly. There's this intense scrutiny of immigrants, particularly people who are low income and people of color. But all of a sudden, we have a program where we can bring in all these high income investors and literally personally profit off the program. And in that case, well, we don't care about the vetting, right? That's Trump's word, extreme vetting. Well, they've actually studied this EB-5 program, and they found that there's not even just no extreme vetting, there's no vetting. Right? What happens is people who have illicit money, right, drug money, corruption money from other countries, and they are moving it into America to protect it, right, to prevent someone from in the home country from at some point ever taking it back. So we're giving people visas who are engaged in corrupt and criminal activities in the countries that they're applying for these EB-5 visas programs. And that, to me, gets to the heart of what the president and Jared are talking about, right? If it benefits me, there's a completely different set of rules for immigrants. If it benefits me politically to attack another set of immigrants, well, we're going to attack them, right? So there's no values. It's just about power and profit, and I think we have to stand up to that.
So with Vic Trump, Kushner, I mean, the name speaks for itself, obviously.
Yeah.
It's quite clear. But, if elected, you're obviously not going to be part of the group. But, I mean, would it be a group I would expect it's still going to go on and you would support, at least from afar?
Absolutely. I would no longer have an active organizing role if I'm elected. But obviously, these are the values that I believe in and the values that I think downtown Jersey City believes in. And so, if I'm elected, those are the values that's going to animate my role in the council. And certainly I would, continue to, support many of the group's efforts. Exactly how I could do that from the council role, I think, would be different. But I'd sort of say to add on two things. One is, the work that we're doing now with the Vic Trump Kushner is very popular, I think, downtown. But it wasn't when we started. Right, the Kushners are very well integrated into the the New Jersey Democratic establishment, and so it took courage to take them on. Right, not just me, this whole organizing group, and I think that is hopefully what distinguishes me from some of the other candidates downtown. They're good people, but they're not willing to take on powerful interests. Right, they're not willing to sacrifice or to endanger their ability to advance higher. Right, that whatever they're going to say is going to be very nice, and they're not going to upset any powerful people, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think we can do better than that. And that's what I think distinguishes me from, many of the other candidates. But the other point is, I know some folks might be saying, hey, you're focused on these national issues, what about local issues? My number one priority is local issues. It's development, okay, it's delivery of government services, we've talked about it before, but
yes.
Potholes, trash, parks, schools, those are the things that are going to make a big difference in, voters' lives in downtown. So that is my number one focus. But again, I don't think we can forget the national or put it to the bottom priority level.
Understood.
Yeah.
So obviously we've had a long conversation about the Kushner Companies. Are there any other particular developers that do business in Jersey City you're really not happy with what they've done up to this point?
Well, I think the campaign going forward will give us an opportunity to discuss a few more of those in detail. But what I think at this point it's worth saying is that we're going to look at some of the abatements that have been given out and talk about, did we get good value back? Did our community benefit or did the developer benefit? And obviously we want a win-win, but I think in a lot of these cases, the developer is getting 80-90% of the value and the community is getting 10% of the value. So we're going to look at a few abatements that have been granted. And then I think redevelopment plans deserve deep scrutiny. Right? Jersey City has more redevelopment plans than the entire state of New Jersey. Right? We rely on redevelopment plans, and I believe many developers are benefiting greatly from redevelopment plans, written 30 years ago, updated recently, and there isn't enough community value coming back out of these redevelopment plans. So I think we want to highlight specific examples so people realize exactly how much value the city is sort of giving away.
So we're obviously, we're touching on a lot of development. Tax abatements, of course, always a hot issue in Jersey City. So something I'm sure you had an eye on was the project labor agreement that the council just passed. So the local chapter of the NAACP was looking for 23% of the workforce to be minorities or women. The council ultimately voted on 20%, as you know. This all started due to a court challenge. Of course, I'm trying to give it the shortest version possible. But when it was all said and done, after about 4 hours in there, I mean, what was your takeaway when you were reading and perhaps watching about this topic?
Well, I read an op-ed that was just published by Barbara Camacho about the PLA, and Barbara made a very strong case in her op-ed that there isn't a enforcement mechanism. So now, we've taken out the quote-unquote good faith clause. But even if we take that out, how are we to ensure that 20% of workers on the PLAs are from Jersey City, that we have minority and women represented in the workforce? And Barbara makes a strong case that this law does not have enough teeth. And so I find that concerning, right? The project agreements are tied into abatements. And that means the developer is getting a huge benefit from our city. And the trade unions are getting a big benefit from our city. And so to not have, I think, the appropriate teeth in the legislation, the appropriate accountability mechanisms, is concerning to me. And I sort of found Barbara's argument to be very convincing, and one that if I were on the council I would want to revisit.
Very good. So, yeah. I mean, I think we touched on a lot. I think that's a good place to call it a day.
Sure.
But anything else you want to add before we part ways here?
Well, first, thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity to, have thoughtful, substantive interviews and, get that message out to voters. And then I think the last piece is, for anyone who's watching and is in downtown, I want to ask for your vote and ask for your support. We are running an independent campaign, so we aren't going to have the developer dollars and city workers that fuel most Jersey City races. So if you're interested in joining us, go to solomonforjc.com, check us out on Facebook, sign up.
All right, thanks very much,
John.
James. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, just let you know we'll be off for the Labor Day holiday. Thanks for joining us again. But when we're back, we will have Hoboken Councilman at Large Ravi Bala. Enjoy the weekend. Take care.
Happy Labor Day.